Chuck Colson was an influential aide to President Richard Nixon. He was implicated in the Watergate scandal. Known as Nixon's hatchet man, Colson was not religious initially. In fact, he was the farthest thing from following Jesus. But you know what? His life took a dramatic change when a friend, Tom, invited him to a small group Bible study where he began to explore what it meant to follow Jesus. Tom Phillips was an executive at a company called Raytheon, a major American defense contractor. Chuck and he had become friends while they were working together. Ultimately, Chuck decided to follow Jesus before serving his prison sentence. After his release, Colson dedicated the rest of his life to prison ministry, literally going back to the place where he was sent and to Christian apologetics, talking about what it means to follow Jesus. He founded an incredible organization called Prison Fellowship, one of the largest Christian outreach programs to prisoners in the world. Friends, the amazing story about Chuck Colson, we see the impact that his ministry has had, but there would be no Chuck Colson without Tom, without the fact that Tom reached out to him and invited him. Thanks for being a part of How to Be a Change Catalyst. This is part 2 of a 4-part series. Let's open up our Bibles. If you've got one, we're looking today in Acts chapter 4, verse 13, just one verse today. Just let me put you in the story. This is after the death and resurrection of Jesus. He has gone back to heaven, and the people who were closest around Jesus, they're out talking about him. They're telling their story about what they saw, and they, like when Jesus was here, they start to see opposition come against them. They start to see people who are pushing against them. But listen to verse 13 and hear this incredible little snippet of the story. The members of the council, these are the people that were kind of coming against the followers of Jesus. They were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John. Why were they amazed? Listen, for they could see that they were ordinary people with no special training in the scriptures. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus. Friends, these two individuals, Peter and John, they were ordinary people. You know, we think of them today like people in stained glass windows or maybe an amazing piece of art hanging in a gallery somewhere. But these two guys who ended up becoming really central to the spread of the message of Jesus, they started as ordinary people who would go to work, and Jesus called them out of that. This gives me inspiration because you know what? I'm an ordinary guy. I feel like I don't always have the words when I want to talk to my friends. These two people, they were pillars doing what? They were showing people that they had been with Jesus. They're telling others about what he's done in their lives. Friends, you don't need to be special. You don't need to be a pastor, a priest, an evangelist. What we need to do is simply share who we are. This is why inviting people to come to our church is a real key way that God wants to make an impact in our community. But friends, when we think about reaching out to those around us, I want us to think this week, in these coming days, about the significance of investing in relationships. The people that you and I are going to invite to our church, these are not projects. These aren't targets. These aren't people that you're trying to convert through some sort of sales experience. That's not what this is about. This is about investing in the relationships that you already have. Going back to the statistic that we talked about earlier in this series, 82% of people said they would come to church if a friend invited them. So what we're trying to do is to deepen our friendships. So today we want to focus you on, let's talk about and think about the relationships that are around us and how could we deepen those relationships? How could we invest in those relationships? There was a study done that showed that 60% of people who normally go to church, who say it's a normal part of their life, they cited personal relationships as being influential in their decision to attend church. Friends, that's amazing. Let's think about that. In fact, it's kind of like football. What do I mean by that? Well, what we want you to do is I want you to think about the relationships in your life sort of like throwing a football. You know, there's a couple different kinds of throws. You've got the short handoff. You know, that's really easy. In fact, you know, you're just going to put it right there in the guy's stomach and he'll take it and run with it. Then you've got the short pass. Maybe you're 10 yards or 5 yards down the field. You know, you toss that. Don't ask me to throw this. I am no good at football. But then you've got those Hail Mary throw, the giant, 50 yards, this giant arm throw all the way down the field. I want you to think about relationships in those three categories. When you're thinking about people that you could invite to come to our church, who is the handoff? Who's that person that you're pretty sure if you ask them, they would come? I want you to be thinking about who those people are. What about the short pass? Maybe this is somebody from work, like in our story earlier today, someone who maybe you know a little bit and you're not quite sure, but maybe they would come. But then I also want you to think about the Hail Mary pass, the long shot, the person who is unlikely to come. And in these three categories, we're going to ask you to do something with those names today at the end with our challenge. What we're asking you to do is to reach out to them, to move towards them. You could text them. One way to think about the kinds of people that you could be inviting is open up your phone, flip to the bottom of your text. Who's at the bottom of your text? You know that's interesting about the people that you find when you scroll right to the bottom of your text, the past text list, is those are people that you have a relationship with, but you haven't talked to in a long time. Maybe those are the short pass, or maybe those are the Hail Marys. Then what we want you to do is want you to think about people and then to move towards them, to say, hey, I'm going to try to invest in those relationships in the coming days. Maybe you invite them over to your house to have dinner. Maybe it's as simple as calling them. Maybe it's dropping by their office. It's moving towards them. The next step we want you to do is to invest in these relationships. Friends, these are people, not projects. We're not trying to win some sort of argument. We're trying to simply be who we are, the ordinary people who have been with Jesus, and to come closer to them. So this is your challenge for the coming days. We want you to create a list of 4 people, just 4, not 10, not 500. We want you to come up with a list of 4. Think about them in those 3 categories that we talked about, and we want you to write them down. Maybe you write them on a whiteboard at home. Maybe you text them to yourself. Maybe you write them on a piece of paper and put them beside your bed. And what we want you to do in the coming days is to be thinking about who those people are and take one step towards them, to do something relationally that moves you closer in their orbit. And we want you to be praying for them every day in the coming days. So that's real simple, friends. 4 people, how can you move towards them? And then how can you be praying for them? Thanks so much for being a part of this challenge. Stay tuned for part 3 in your inbox. It'll be with us in a few days. Thanks, friends.